if a superhero makes and makes things happen, Nick then, he makes complex ideas accessible. He says he wants to make ideas move beyond the academy, and he does just this. He makes his pedagogy public. He hosts open pedagogical interventions via social media, some of which I have participated in. He shares the syllabi online, and he invites engagement. Nick's work makes us think about our own work, no matter the discipline. He makes us think differently about particular issues. One of my all-time favorite pieces by Nick is the one he drew for Nature, which at one time, and perhaps still, was one of the most highly viewed articles on Nature about environmental issues, as you might expect. Nick's work makes us think about how our minds and bodies move through the world. Yesterday, he talked about comics making as choreography, and I think that's an amazing idea. Nick's work makes us think about how we express our ideas, again, no matter the discipline. Drawing helps us make sense of the world, he says. Making images is a part of being human, he says. And yesterday he showed us, through cave drawings, among others, that drawing images is as old as we are. So perhaps we were made to draw. Maybe that's what you're going to make us do today. You like that? Nick says the act of drawing can help us make or generate thoughts and new ways of thinking. They can teach us, he says. They can make us learn. Yesterday he said, the drawing told me I should think about that, which I think is a dazzling way to think. So he makes drawings that make him think differently. And today he's going to get us to make drawings and lead us through a comics making exercise. Another thing he said yesterday that caught my attention was that art making has made him smarter. So today, may we all leave a tad bit smarter than when we arrived as a result of our making together this afternoon. So, welcome, Nick.
So my website, this is my website, like on the left side of the tabs up top, you can read about me and stuff I'm doing. But on the far right, there's this education button that's highlighted in orange right now. And on it, I have things like, it starts here with my syllabi. And if you click some of these, some of my classes I've gone through and not just put the syllabi, but also all the things I did over the semester and what students produced each of those things we did. So it's all there. And then on the right side, I have more resources than I know quite how to organize, but I thought this is a particular interest. I meant to mention it yesterday. But those of you, there's a lot of narrative medicine going around this room, but I collected a lot of things on graphic medicine, which is a subset of narrative medicine. And I spend a lot of time with my students thinking about it, and they certainly are very interested in jumping into that. So without just, that's there, and you can make use of it. So from here, 1 second. Forgot to plug my clicker in. Okay. So like I said, these are my classes. These are my more recent syllabi. And I think it's important. I think it's important for me to understand what I'm doing, to put it there from the start, and also for them to understand where we're going. It's much more helpful, and it's really not about drawing. I mean, there's almost no drawing in there. It's about organizing things, and that's stuff anybody can do. And I wrote this in one of them, and I shared it, like I took a picture at 1 o'clock in the morning and put it on Twitter, and it was the most shared thing I've ever posted. We will study and we will play, and we'll see that those activities aren't so different. And I was really thinking in the panel, which I really enjoyed, how much university is sort of antithetical to wellness in its, and I don't mean that in critical of any. I think the institution of schooling tends to be antithetical to it. So as I said yesterday, I think one of the keys of my work and that I can get students to do is see how much the drawing can teach us where to go, and to tap into our visual system, to see connections, to use all this power that's going on all the time to be part of our thinking. So some of the things I do with my students, this is just a quick look before we start drawing. Sketch notes, which is maybe there's a graphic facilitation, there's things like that. But I make students take notes in class that are ideas, not art. This is a book by Mike Rohde called Sketch Notes. But and I have them do it in my class, but then I send them to another class, just one class, pick one. And this is a non-drawer who did some amazing comics for me. But he just took off and he went to a class and this is what he made. Or this might have been from a reading, but this is Odessa, who you saw yesterday. He's talking about who she is. And this was a drawer who happened to do the same kind of thing, so it's a little fancier than some of the other ones. And the other thing I do, and this, if you're going to teach comics, I'm just sort of putting this into, is to do things like analysis in a visual way. I think the key, often, I mean, this is a common thing, I think comics tend to be taught in English departments as if they're the same as textbooks. I mean, as word books, sorry. But they're really not. So getting them to like draw directly on the material, this was with several layers of Mylar. This person is doing it just on one sheet, but all the sort of color coding, this explosion of their thinking that comes out is so awesome to see. And you could certainly translate it to a piece of, to word book form afterwards. But I think to see all the little diagrams that they're like, wow, there it is. And you can sort of follow along almost in real time to how they figured out what this page was doing. You're going to take your single sheet of paper, and it can be 8.5 by 11, or you can fold it, or your notebook, doesn't matter. And you're going to carve it up into some sort of grid-esque fashion, thinking about ceiling tiles or comic book pages, that represents the shape of your day. It can be the shape of, we're sort of at the start of today, so maybe it's not today, maybe it's yesterday. Maybe it's your typical day, maybe it's like, what is your average day, kind of how do you move through your average day? So I want you to organize it in some way that represents the shape of the experiences you go through in a day. Okay, you can sort of wrap up and then take a quick exchange with the people around you, sort of look at it, talk to, not exchange, like exchanges in dialogue, not exchanges in give it to them.
A box that had failed, or it wasn't failing, but it was stretched. It's at its limits.
It's not smooth.
It's not smooth.
The mornings, bubble meals represent the sleep. I'm going to spend my day with them. And then the morning's pretty good. It looks like window, right?
So this is the moon rising.
Or the sun.
Oh, the sun, okay.
So did anyone find you drew exactly the same thing? No.
Did you say what?
Did anyone draw exactly the same thing?
Wait, two of us?
Yeah, sorry. No, I know you didn't. I know the answer to that one. Sorry. Have you made a lot of comics before?
I've drawn a lot.
You have. I didn't know. But already we know a lot. I mean, Bill's picked all these things to talk about time, and I assume this is waking up. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or sleeping to waking, but here it's starting to change. It's the alarm clock, and then
Snooze.
right. And he's probably not alone in having that. And so let me just look. Amanda has a very different structure, but a similar.
Still waking and sleeping.
Still waking and sleeping, but you have some sort of common things. And I would guess some of you have something somewhat similar, which is usually the parts that you can sort of pick that are commonality. So you've both made up some kind of system, which is probably culturally mediated a tiny bit, but also you're thinking about space, and you're thinking about it in very different ways. So I think about how to move through the page. So the sort of backwards S or Z for Scheherazade, the flowing of the water here, sort of, the coming from multiple views. Going down didn't work because I wanted it to be lightning. I wanted it to go up. And so like I do things, I showed you this yesterday, zithers, where I draw some kind of shape and then the students try to figure out something that then turns into a story about that. I want you to do one thing that's going to get you really thinking about making comics that you can make yourselves. If you don't know Linda Berry's work, it's worth having a look at to think about making for non-makers. And I think this is nice, just fun. There was a time when drawing came easily. We liked to scribble. We drew lines on the wall, and we got in trouble for it. And we did it again. Drawing and moving were not separated yet. We were just playing around. What is making a picture all about? Is it for everyone? What makes kids draw? What makes adults scared to draw? Yes, it is real fear, but of what? Why aren't kids scared of it? And what is it that one day comes to make them afraid? And I think that's good, and I think it's not possible to know what we are trading away when we learn how to draw in a certain way with intention. Step one is the eyes. I remember trying to get the eyes to match and being yelled at for wasting paper, and I remember realizing I could not draw. Okay, so now we're going to take our single sheet, a new clean sheet of paper, and you're going to find the back of it, and you're going to write your name and a number 1 on the back. So this is a clean sheet, just small, just like number.
Just small.
Oh, or big. That's not too big. That's wonderful, Jules. Okay. All right, so, and then you're going to flip it over, and on the front side.
Names of the number 1.
Yeah, names with the number 1. That should be good. Everybody just needs one sheet. That's all we're. Has everybody got a sheet? We're all set? Okay. So you've got your name on the back, and on the front side, what I would like you to do is make some sort of panel structure that's a little bit interesting. Doesn't have to be crazy complicated, but make it sort of grid-esque. And that's it. Do not draw on it. Do not put words in it. You are to organize the sort of boxes or non-boxes if you use non-boxes, but you're not drawing. You are arranging the space. You are an architect who's designing the rooms for the story to move through. Figure out some way to pass so that everybody gets one that they didn't have. Or you can do it that way, the sort of random throw it around the room. So now, let's make sure everybody, before you do anything, make sure that Jules gets one. You gotta pass yours. There you go. Okay, so now on the back, which is now easier to decide which side that is, put a number 2 and your name on it, on the back. So now on the front side, what I would like you to do is to put the words in. So it can be dialogue, it can be narrative captions, and so to put the words and the supports that they might come in. So if it's a word balloon, you're familiar enough with comics to know that you'll put the dialogue and the word balloon. If it's a thought balloon, the same thing. You draw both the thought balloon and the words inside it. If it's a narrative caption, you draw the box around it and the words in it. And if it's a sound effect that wouldn't come in a caption, or then you do it. Does that make sense? So the words and anything that carries the words. The structure's a little loose here, like there's a lot of negative space, which may or may not want to use, but they're writing inside. She's writing inside and outside because she's mixing it up like this because she happens to have a lot of negative space around it. But can I just steal yours for a second?
Yes.
I'll give it right back. He's writing in miniature right here and here. So I mean that might be what we expect, but it really depends on the boxes you got. So now you're going to pass it to someone who hasn't had it. You can put your number 3 on the back and put your name, and then you are to draw the comic. How'd we do? We do well? Did we? We did.
We learned the limits of our abilities.
What I find with collaboration, I'm going to show you one. After everything that happened, it all came apart, and I wasn't strong enough. I'm sorry, Mom, I tried. But what's awesome about this is it was done exactly the same way, except for the time constraint, which obviously is that's a hard constraint. But what I love about collaboration, and I think is I think I keep doing more and more exercises with it, is that, people say, well, I don't have an idea for a story. I don't have that's all sort of taken away, and you've got to respond to somebody else's challenge and move. And I think you said it really well. Like, I couldn't stop to think about it. I just had to, I don't know what you said, something like that. I just had to go, right? And I find that they leapfrog where they were very quickly because they've removed those sort of I don't know how to fill the page, I'm nervous, I don't have a good story. Well, that's not that important. It's like learning how to do it. And when you learn how to do it, you can go a lot of places. So, and this one, I don't know how this happened. But I've seen it, this is obviously much less time. That was pretty neat. But again, they took it home. But you're forced to find solutions. And I think I said last night the thing about, we're rats in creating the maze from which to escape. That's kind of the idea here. And you build your own mazes, and you find ways to go. So I'm going to leave that up. Probably we're done unless Eileen makes me do something else. But all right, anyway, thank you.